Hey everyone, so in this video I'm going to be going over aging for guys, and I'm just going to be going through step by step on drawing heads from a baby to an old man. So I'm going to be probably doing that in about 4 or 5 steps, so let's get started with drawing the child. So when it comes to drawing the child, it's quite easy. It's similar to like a chibi. In fact, maybe I could go through chibi first and then I will go ahead and draw and I'll draw a baby. So when it comes to drawing chibi, you want to first draw your cranium as always. But then what you want to do is that you want to actually make his head very stout. So at this point here, you want to jet out the cheek. Let me zoom in. Oops, that's zooming out. And then what you want to do is you want to just make his face very squished. Now, of course, chibis have different kind of styles, but generally, you just want to squish the face as if you're like kind of like clapping something or whatever, and it just boing, you know. I don't even know if that's even a good description. You're basically just squishing the face. If we're making a very cold guy, for example, he'd look very cute. So let me just do a random character here. So let's give him some sharp eyes here. And when it comes to chibis, the good thing is that their eyes can be as big as you want. Of course, not too big. There's still always balance. But I would say even up to the nose would be pretty good. So notice how the eye is pretty much close to the nose here at this point, and that's pretty acceptable. So now we can go ahead and draw the rest. Make sure it's not too skewed, or just make sure that the eye fits in the head. And the bigger the pupils are, the better as well, because it looks cuter. Let's give him some thick eyebrows. And let's make his mouth very tiny. When it comes to the neck, however, you don't really see the neck very often. You just kind of see the collar. So let's give him a little collar. Let's give him like a little cute vampire-looking collar. And by this point, you can just draw in his little body, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to keep it at that. For hair, maybe let's give him some spiky hair, shall we? Let's first draw in his eyes, though. So let's draw highlights. Let's give him some sharp eyes here. We're making a little vampire guy here, because why not? Let's give him some really nice, straight, kind of spiky bangs that cover one side of his face. Once again, I'm always drawing in big strands first and then little strands after. And I like to tuck, some hair around the face. If you want to draw some more frayed out hair, you can just go ahead and sketch out some nice strands here. Make sure they're all going in a pretty similar direction. If you want to go on the other side, you want to do that on the opposite, because that just shows the gravity flowing down. So, little mini vampire guy, chibi head, pretty much done. Now let's go ahead and erase that. Erase some of the lines here. You don't have to put too much detail to the hair at this point, except for maybe some strands, like where it all connects. And maybe some front bangs that show some depth. So that's, a pretty good guy. All right, now let's draw a baby version of him. So baby doesn't necessarily mean chibi, although it could be pretty related. When you draw a baby, it's just in his baby form. So chibi is more like a grown-up but small looking. So that's the difference. So now let's go ahead and draw a baby. So when it comes to baby, their head is very round. So once again, draw the cranium. And at this point, keep the top part pretty wide. And like the chibi, just rounder, you want to make his face very squished. but it's rounder, so you don't confuse it with the sharper look. You want to look like a child. You want it to look like a child, so actually let's give him some pointy ears, because why not? Vampire, right? Now when it comes to babies, their noses are very button-like, so just a little point would do. The mouth can still be, pretty similar because it's the same guy, right? So, have some freedom with that. Let's give him, let's zoom in a little bit more so we can see more of his face. When it comes to babies' eyes are very round, so I would go ahead and make his eyes a little bit rounded on the top. And then his eyes even rounder. So notice that roundness looks very different from the chibi because, when you're drawing a kid, the roundness is definitely something different. It makes it look more childish rather than just, a chibi. And when it comes to the eyebrows, I would make it a lot fainter because, hair is not that developed yet. We get thicker hair as we get older. You can also draw the little devil eyes, or the little pointed eyes. And then what we can do is we can fill the rest in, but make it pretty innocent looking, so round it out even more. So notice how in this one I made it very sharp, and this one I made the eyeballs a lot rounded around the edges, so it looks like a little leaf. And when it comes to his hair, since his hair is more like spiky-ish, I'm going to give him little fuzz balls, little peach fuzz. Because when it comes to babies, their hair has not fully grown yet, or it's just very short right now. Some babies have very long hair, by the way. But keep it pretty similar. Make sure it's the same person. So notice how when I start drawing the heads, I don't necessarily always do the cross line and everything. I do that when it comes to, teaching you guys, but when you get used to it, you start actually just doing this by muscle memory. So anyways, when it comes to the neck, you don't have to really draw much on the neck other than just draw a little stub. So that's a kid. That actually looks more toddler-like, but we'll call it a baby. Baby. Then we can go on for more of a toddler look. More of like a child, like maybe the age of 6 or 7 or maybe even 10. So let's say 10 years old. So this guy, if he's like 10 years old, he would probably look a little bit more adolescent, right? Maybe we'll give him like 12. Let's say 12. He's 12 years old now. Let's once again draw the cranium, as always. In this case, we're still going to give him childish features by still making sure that his face is a little bit more rounded and stubby, but it's a little bit sharper this time. So notice how he's starting to develop a little bit from the baby to the more angular look. It's starting to look a little bit like this guy here. So this is his teenage years. His 12-year-old phase, right? Very adolescent, kind of still has his baby features, but definitely growing. At this point, I would like to make his nose a little bit more pronounced at this point. And his mouth more mature looking. When it comes to his eyes, you can draw in the eye line and the eyebrow line here. His eyes are going to be a little bit smaller, but still pretty big. They're getting sharper, though, than his eyebrows. Or sorry, not his eyebrows. So the bigger the eyes, the more childish he looks. And the smaller and thinner his eyes look, the more adult he looks. So he looks pretty much like 12 here. He's still an inexperienced vampire, right? But he's growing. So this is where his neck starts being more pronounced. You can sort of see more of his sternocleidomastoid. Maybe he can start, growing into his, little shirts and everything, his little collar. Let's give him some interesting hair, shall we? When it comes to the hair for like a guy, when it comes to being of age, he might have a more not as rebellious hairstyle. Well, depending of course of his personality. But if he's let's say of royal blood, his hair will probably be when he's a kid probably more mature, not mature, probably more like reserved because maybe he's still under his parents' roof and they still have like a certain cut. Maybe he's still at school, and some people when they're at school they have a certain cut. So let's give him a more reserved look. This is more of like his straight, not as stylized hair, but still showing who he is, right? So some phrase here and there, but generally mostly straight. Notice I'm always wrapping around like a sphere. It's not a straight line all the time. So this will be his 12-year-old teen look. Pretty good so far. Now let's move on to a more adult look. Maybe this is in his 18, a young adult, or 19 form. How about that? This is when he starts to grow out his more of his manly features, right? So we can go ahead and do that. Make his face longer. Actually, let's say that this is when he's 20 years old. Here we have his brow ridge, his nose line, his mouth, his mouth line, his eye line up here, really faint. And this will probably be the chibi version. Or this is the grown-up version of the chibi version. How about that? So now we have his eyebrow ridge jutting out and his cheekbone jutting out, and then drag it all the way down here. Then we lift to the jawline. And then we have the full-on elf ears, or vampire ears. How about that? So as you can see, more of the difference. Still in his teens, more built and more just overall more mature looking. In this case now, at this point, I like to draw in the nose because it makes him look more built. And then his mouth. His eyes will be a little bit thinner now and sharper. So he's fully mature now. And then his eyebrows would also be more thicker and bushier, I would say. Or just overall longer. So here is his other eye, also taking into account of how big his other eye is. And now let's draw in his more rebellious looking hair. Let's give him coat. Let's give him a little bit of more of a built neck, so his Adam's apple's out. Maybe let's make his mouth a little bit open. Now let's zoom out so I can draw in some hair. So comparing to his last hairstyle, looks kind of spiky, looks kind of messy, so let's go with that. So in this case, I would make it a little bit more mature looking than the chibi version. So that means probably more of a relaxed look, not as spiky. More framing his face, more mature looking, you know. So notice the difference between this shape versus this one. This one's more outgoing and more just overall more energetic. This one's more laid back. And of course, we can go ahead and spread out his hair just a little bit more. All making sure we always have a root where we're going at. So this is the part where everything's coming out of. That is his 20-year-old. 20 to 25, maybe. Okay, so we got that. Now, another one we can go ahead and do is more like 40s, or maybe when he finally has a family, or maybe got a girlfriend, or maybe let's say full adult, like not full adult, he's already full adult here. Let's say more like he's a dad now. So in this case, I would say just tone him out even more. So in some cases, a lot of people finish growing at this age, and then they just kind of grow out their wrinkles. In this case, I'm going to give him more manly features just for artistic purposes. So I'm going to make him have a longer look, a longer jaw, not too long, making sure it's not like, you know, this is still pretty much halfway. Once again, his nose. He'll still look pretty similar, just you'll see in a little bit where how I make him different. So once again, I have his nose and I have his mouth already. In this case, I'm going to make him very built. Let's say he worked out a lot, you know, during his years. He's powered up. And let's give him some nice traps. And let's give him a little bit of a lip down here. Let's give him some nice slanted eyes, as always. And let's give him some nice brows. And let's give him some thinner eyes just to kind of differentiate between the two. Usually thinner eyes just mean more serious, and we can give him some eye bags. So eye bags kind of tell your age. We can even change the shape of his nose just a little bit. And even kind of change a little bit of the tone in his eyes. We can even kind of change a little bit of his form in the head here. So make it more, you know, pushing out the jawline more, etc. So I'm going to edit this just a little bit because it looks a little bit squished. And once again, we can just fill in the blanks. I'm not the best at drawing old guys or older guys, but I try my best. Here is the eye bag. Maybe let's give him a beard, I don't know. Facial hair usually makes people look a lot older too. So let's give him a little goatee or something. Let's make it fun, you know? So, you know, makes him look a bit older now. But I'm not finished here. So I'm gonna add a little bit more of these features here. This is just accentuating the eyebrow ridge and his manly features, right? Now let's make him regress a little bit. Maybe let's make his hair just a little bit more tame and more mature. So usually more mature guys would have probably shorter haircuts because it's just easier. Once again, follow the form of the face. You know, he's just like, yeah, I'm too old for this. I'm taking care of 5 vampire little kids, and my wife's, pulling my hair out. No, I'm kidding. Or whatever. And my job hates me or whatever. I'm getting bad at this vampire stuff. I don't know. Maybe he has some issues. So, make him look older like this. This looks terrible. Maybe I should just take out the beard. I don't like the beard very much. Good riddance. Yeah, I like this better. That's much better. So it looks kind of like he's a baby again, but just older. Maybe I'll give him just a little bit of a little bit of a stubble. There. So that's him when he's, I don't know, 40. So let's see the progression here. We're 20 minutes in. So chibi, baby, 12-year-old, 20 to 25-year-old, and then 40 years old. Let's give him a turtleneck. How about that? Fit the vampire vibe. Notice I'm also doing hatching. So I think at this point, if you're going to draw an old guy, I don't really like drawing old guys, so I think I'm just going to stop here. I think 40-year-old is a good way to stop because most of the time when it comes to drawing anime and continuing on their growth, people usually like to stop at 40 years old and then they don't draw the old guy anymore. Mostly because it's not as sounds mean, but it's not as attractive to see. So usually you just want to, the most attractive point to see a character in, the main character, is when they're an adult and they are married. So that's why they usually stop at this point. So I'm going to stop at this point too. Because 1, I'm not good at drawing old guys. But 2, it's not going to be easy. But anyways, that's pretty much it for this video. Let me know what you guys think. Hopefully that this was helpful. And I will see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye. Whoops. Bye-bye.